the Traffic Council meeting. Thank you for joining us for our February 27th Traffic Council meeting. I'm just going to begin by introducing the members of Traffic Council, the voting members. My name is David Kozis. I am the Transportation Coordinator from the Department of Public Works. Also voting members, we have Captain Devine from the Traffic Bureau, Adrian Ayala, our traffic engineer from Public Works. We have Margot Spiller. She's our citizen representative tonight. Katie Holden is our city clerk. And Katie, I don't see either Councillor Downs or Greenberg. Do we know if one of them is expected to join or if we have a different? Oh, I do see Councillor Bixby. I'm not sure who's voting for City Council tonight. Do you know?
I haven't heard anything.
Okay. So we will be joined hopefully by Councillor Downs or Councillor Greenberg at this meeting. Also, I see we are joined at the beginning of the meeting by Barney Heath, our Director of Planning. We have from the Planning Department also Nora Massler. I'm expecting that we'll see Zach Lamel joining us soon. I also see Jeannie Fairley, our ADA coordinator. And as far as our city councilors so far, I see Councillor Maliki from Ward 3 and Councillor Danberg from Ward 6. And I'm just going to run through this. Oh, I do see that Zach has joined us. And Councillor Bixby is here from Ward 6. And I see Councillor Wright as well from Ward 3, and Hannah Sternberg from the Planning Department. All right, so we're going to begin with our first item of the night. It is AP 125, Amanda Kuzmiak requesting an accessible parking space out in front of Pagi Physical Therapy at 552 Commonwealth Avenue, just east of the crosswalk crossing Commonwealth Avenue. So we're going to begin with a short presentation and then we'll open it up for public comment. So this item was heard by the Newton Commission on Disability. They met on February 10th and they voted to approve this request. The request is in this location. You can see it in the red rectangle on this map on Commonwealth Avenue. Here's a view from the street. This is a request to add an accessible parking space right in this location shown with the white rectangle for clients of this physical therapy business or others who might need to use it. Again, this was reviewed by the mayor, by the Commission on Disability and approved unanimously. Our recommendation tonight is that we do approve this request. We do have the language to be able to vote on tonight. And we will go, at this point, we'll just go to public comment. If anyone would like to make a comment on this item before Traffic Council takes, before any further discussion or Traffic Council vote, if you could just raise your hand and we could call on you. And I do see now that we are joined by Councillor Downs, who is our 5th voting member of Traffic Council. All right, I do not see anybody. Okay, Jeannie, can you please unmute? And go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. I believe Amanda is here on the call, and also I think the owner of Pagi Physical Therapy as well, if they want to speak, but I didn't see them do their hands. So I'll just say that this seems like a very good place. It's a small commercial area, but very, very busy and possibly very hard to find some parking. And besides people having temporary physical issues, Amanda had said at the meeting, at the Commission on Disability meeting, that they do also have people, customers who do have a placard for permanent disability. So And sometimes they have to walk quite a distance to get just to the door. So this would be fantastic, and thank you for the recommendation.
Thank you, Jean, for the comment. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this before we go to discussion and a potential vote? Okay. So like I said, we do have the language before us that was distributed. This would be called TPR 973. It would make a permanent change to our traffic and parking regulations to add this specific location as shown in the text on slide 7. And because it is a vote, if we do vote to approve, we do have a 20-day appeals period. So after 20 days, so sometime after March 19th, if there's no appeal, then our city crew would be able to go out and, insert the sign and the markings in the space, weather permitting, of course. So, seeing no other comments, I would like to make a motion to approve the language of TPR 973 to add the accessible parking space. And Katie, I just want to let you know that our practice at Traffic Council is for the clerk to call each of us individually so that we each would vote. Usually they call on my name first, and then Adrian, Captain Divine, Counselor Downs, and then Margot. So maybe could you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Kosis, how do you vote?
Aye. Yes, aye.
Mr. Ayala,
Aye.
Captain Divine,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
and Miss Spiller.
Aye.
Okay, so that was approved 5-0, TPR 973 for AP 125. And we're going to move on to our next item. Our next item is AP 724. This is Donna Messenger requesting an accessible parking space in front of 147 Arnold Road. This item was heard in October by the Commission on Disability, voted to approve. We did hear this before at our November 21st Traffic Council meeting, and we held it. Barney, did you have a question? Okay, because your hand went up. I think that was a mistake. Okay. So this is the location of the request of the accessible parking space on Arnold Road. At the meeting back in November, we had a pretty long discussion, and it came down to this question of this: is this pathway right here between the sidewalk and the street considered a curb cut? So if it is a curb cut, that means that there's no parking in front of the curb cut, or if there is a car that's parked in front of any curb cut in Newton, it's a $200 fine. So we could not approve the accessible space to be in front of this walkway right here if it was considered to be a curb cut, and that is exactly where the petitioner wanted the accessible space to be. So we held it to do a little bit more research. We also knew that the street was under reconstruction at the time. So we wanted to see, what it looked like when the construction was done. And here's what it looks like now. So it is clearly a curb cut. So now we know that the accessible parking space could not go directly in front of the curb cut. It would have to be either, on one side of the curb cut or the other side. So since we, made that determination, we found from the petitioner that they are no longer interested in having a curb cut if it can't, in having the accessible space, if it could not be right in front of the curb cut. So the request was to take no action on this item. The request was basically rescinded. And so unless there's any discussion, I'll make a motion to NAN this item. Is there any discussion on this? Okay, so I will make a motion to NAN this item. And Katie, can you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Ayala,
Aye.
Captain Divine,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Miss Spiller.
Aye.
So that is 5-0. This item, we are taking no action. We voted NaN. So our next item is TC 925. This is Traffic Bureau Captain Daniel Devine, DPW Commissioner Shauna Sullivan, and Commissioner of Public Buildings Josh Morse, requesting a long-term trial to allow for temporary changes to certain parking regulations and traffic circulation on streets near the Franklin Elementary School in order to facilitate the reconstruction of the school. Once the project is complete, any change made will be rescinded and will revert to the official regulations as listed in Newton's traffic and parking regulations. Any permanent changes to the traffic and parking regulations will be made through separate traffic council items to be docketed subsequently. So this item is because we are constructing a new Franklin school in the near future. Here is the site plan. And we hold these types of construction projects as trials so that staff could quickly respond to changing conditions in the field, right? So, for instance, we know that there's going to be a relocation of the blue zone. We already know there's going to be a relocation of the bus zone where the buses currently drop off is going to change during the period of construction of the school. Possibly some temporary parking regulations might be necessary. So we hold this as a trial, and then that just means we can quickly make the changes just through staff action. And so that is the recommendation, to hold this item as a long-term trial. Any questions on this before we entertain a motion to hold? Seeing none, I will make a motion to hold this item for a trial as laid out in the text on slide 16. And Katie, can you call the roll on this one?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Ayala,
Aye.
Captain Divine,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Miss Spiller.
Aye.
Okay, so that one is held 5-0. Then our next item is TC 1025, David Kozas, Traffic Council Chair, requesting to update the traffic and parking regulations to reflect the changes made in Newton Corner by MassDOT in the vicinity of the exit 127 eastbound off-ramp. So many of us know this area and that there were recent changes made by MassDOT in the southwestern corner of the Newton Corner Rotary. Here's a couple photos that I took. So, we know now that the left 2 lanes are separated by a median from the right 2 lanes coming off of the Pike. We know that there used to be an entrance into the Richardson Street parking lot from Washington Street, which is no longer available. So this construction is now complete. We need to go to our traffic and parking regulation, which is just like a 250-page document that lists every single parking regulation, every traffic signal, every stop sign, all sorts of site-specific information throughout the city. We just need to go and make the appropriate updates to the language. That's why this item was docketed. So for instance, we know that there is no longer access from Center Avenue. Center Avenue is the name of that roadway when you're coming off the Pike. We know that there's no longer access from Center Avenue into the Richardson Street municipal lot. We need to remove that from our regulations. We now have 2 signals with a light that turns red and green and yellow in the left 2 lanes and in the right 2 lanes. So now we want to make sure that the regulations are specific, that you cannot turn right on red from the left 2 lanes or from the right 2 lanes. And obviously there's no parking on this roadway, this section of roadway in Newton Corner. We just wanted to clean up the sort of confusing language that was in there before in terms of parking along the circle, the Newton Corner rotary. So these are the items that we just need to change in our traffic and parking regulations. And I would make a motion to approve the language as shown on these 2 slides on page 20 and 21. This would be TPR 974. Are there any questions before we vote on these changes? Councilor Downs.
Yeah, just quickly, this isn't going to be, I mean, this will be changed if they change further things in the circle, as we expect they will, right?
Yeah, like every time there's any change anywhere,
We're
right,
going to have to do this.
we go and docket something with traffic council. As long as they're permanent changes, we vote to make them official. So this happens all the time. That's why we handle, like, I don't know, sometimes 100 different items every year at this, in this council. So yes, any further changes that would require a change to our traffic and parking regulations, we would vote on again. All right.
Great,
so
thanks.
Yes, thank you. So we have the motion made to approve the language of TPR 974 for TC 1025. And Katie, can you call the roll on this one, please?
Mr. Kosis,
Aye.
Mr. Ayala,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Counselor Downs, Ms. Spiller.
Aye.
Okay, so that passes 5-0. Technically, we have a 20-day appeals period. It's not going. I mean, no one's going to appeal it, and we're not going to change anything anyway. It just means we need to wait until after March 19th until we update our traffic and parking regulations, really, in this case. So our next item, I'm going to open it up for discussion. Actually, I'm going to unshare my screen at this point. Okay. And I am going to read the item into the record and then turn it over to the planning department. I think Zach is going to do this presentation, Zach Lamel.
Yep, I'll kick us off. I'll kick us off, David, when you're ready.
Okay, Barney. So let me just read the item into the record. It's a long item to read through. It's TC 825. Mayor Ruth Ann Fuller and Director of Planning and Development Barney Heath requesting a trial to remove a portion of the 2 westernmost rows of parking within the Langley Road Triangle Municipal Parking Lot in Newton Center and relocate the 12 reserved spots for employee parking, the 2 reserved spots for Zipcar, and the 2 reserved spots for blue bikes for a net reduction of between 5 and 10 triangle lot public parking spaces to allow for the creation of a temporary public plaza for gathering, arts, and play in the heart of Newton Center. Substitute parking opportunities totaling approximately 64 spaces will be examined in areas near the triangle lot during this trial period, such as the following: adding an additional proposed parking spaces along the southbound side of Center Street near Willow Street, converting Lyman Street into a one-way westbound circulation pattern and relocating the public parking spaces from the south side of Lyman Street to the north side of Lyman Street, changing the parking regulations on Dalton Road with the goal of increasing daytime parking opportunities for the general public, changing the parking regulations on Pelham Street with the goal of increasing parking opportunities for the general public, changing the parking regulations on a portion of the south side of Pleasant Street with the goal of increasing parking opportunities for the general public, reducing the width of parking spaces along a portion of Beacon Street, and changing the parking regulations on Brayland Avenue with the goal of increasing parking opportunities for the general public. The 12 employee parking spots currently within the triangle lot are proposed to be relocated within the village center, either in other municipal lots or metered street parking. The 2 Zipcar spaces currently within the triangle lot are proposed to be relocated to 2 parking spaces within either the Cypress Street, Pleasant Street, or Pelham municipal lots. As a trial, none of these changes are permanent, right? And permanent changes could only occur through subsequent traffic council docket items and action. So that's the item. I'm going to turn it over now to the Director of Planning, Barney Heath.
Thank you, David. Good evening. The Newton Center Pilot Plaza has gotten a lot of attention since it was first announced. After the first of the year, the initial, as you'll see tonight in just a second, the initial plan has been substantially revised to take into account a lot of the feedback that we received since the project was announced, a lot focusing on the temporary loss of parking spaces within the triangle. So as you'll see tonight, we've adjusted the size of the plaza, the number of parking spaces that would be temporarily displaced, and importantly, the length of the trial. The other piece that we're trialing as well is a series of additional parking spaces that you'll see in and around Newton Center. And again, the effort there was to identify spaces that exist close to Newton Center that currently aren't available for public parking that make sense to try out on a trial basis. So I think with that, I'm going to ask, I should mention we're joined tonight by Zachary Lamel, who's our Chief of Long Range Planning, Nora Masler, who's our Senior Planner, and Hannah Sternberg, who's our Outreach Coordinator. Zach, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Barney. I'm going to share my screen. And I also want to acknowledge that this effort is and has been and obviously will continue to be a collaborative effort. And that's obviously not just with the community but it's also with all of our city departments. So I want to make sure, I think I saw Ned Codd from DPW, obviously David and Adrian on Traffic Council coordinating with them and DPW. I saw cultural development being represented, Archana Menon, I saw, and obviously Paula, who's not here, and other folks in the Parks Department. So I just want to acknowledge all the different city folks who've been coordinating, and as well, fire and police, keeping them in the loop and coordinating. So can everybody see my screen? Great. So Barney and David, thank you for reading the official docket language into the record. The plaza, or this pilot plaza, has always had kind of 2 different components. There's the plaza space and increasing the amount of publicly available space in Newton Center. This isn't a green space. This is a plaza. It is different than let's say, a park. But the second part has been the increase in supply of available public parking at the same time. So I know that might be one of the main focuses tonight. So I'm going to go through the plaza proposal, why we're doing it, then dive right into the various public parking proposals, including some data collection that's been done and looked at over the last decade, including most recently some counts that we've done, and then talk about the process going forward. So, as the chair mentioned, as the director mentioned, this is a pilot. This is temporary. It is a test. We are looking at trying something out that will take what is currently a portion of a parking lot and turn it and reimagine it into opportunities for all. Really as a way to reinforce Newton Center as the community, cultural, and retail destination that it is, and the incredible one that it is, obviously, already. We are also really lucky to be piggybacking off of the scheduled repaving and reclamation that's going to be happening at the Langley lot, at the Triangle lot. So we'll be able to be following that. And then again, talking about these other parking opportunities, improving wayfinding, general safety, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not starting from scratch, which is wonderful. We're able to build off of the bones that is Newton Center and the incredible place that it already is. I think we all know where we are, what we're talking about. We're really, the plaza is focused in on the Langley lot and then the other proposals throughout the village center. As Barney mentioned, our original proposal at the beginning of the year was to look at the two westernmost portions of the triangle to create a temporary 16,000 square foot public plaza. That would have resulted in 48 spaces in the lot itself and then 4 spaces on Langley between the Newton Center Green and the War Memorial for a total of 52 spaces. This, as Barney mentioned, we are not moving forward with you tonight. That's not what we're here to focus on. Just want to say that this has evolved through community feedback that we've been hearing since we launched this project. And we are looking at the southwestern corner of the triangle to create a plaza and really only end up with a net loss in the triangle of 8 spaces due to taking not currently available public spaces and making them publicly available. And then, as we'll get into it in a second, creating an additional 60 spaces in and around the village center as well. So this is a project that increases the total number of public parking spaces as well, again, as creating that public plaza. And not going to dwell on this too much here, but we are working with our design consultant. We have a community event plan to think about what this space could look like. Not only what this space could look like from program-wise, design-wise, but how it can better connect to the Newton Center Green, how they can enhance and complement each other, and how there can be other interventions that will help people move cleanly, clearly, safely in and around the village center as a whole. And that is true whether you're coming by a car, a bike, or walking. Okay, now I am going to go into the parking piece of this proposal and where those extra spaces are. Again, first starting with a little bit of data. So this shows the kind of universe of public parking within Newton Center. The boundaries are taken from a 2017 parking strategy report for Newton Center. What you see in the colors in this kind of reddish color are the municipal lots, the Triangle Lot, Cypress, Pelham, Pleasant. Then immediately outside of that is a light blue color. Those are the on-street metered spaces. And then beyond that are the on-street non-metered spaces. And what you come to is about 1,200 plus publicly available parking spaces. What I have circled here in magenta are 2 to 3 of the different proposals that we're looking at. And I think what you can really see here, and we'll talk about in a different way, is that these are outliers within the kind of overall village center and what's allowed when it comes to publicly available spaces. And then beyond that, there is another 1,000 private parking spaces kind of scattered about the village center as well. So there is a lot of parking here throughout. And going to some past studies, Newton Center has been looked at a bunch, not just as a parking study, but obviously thinking holistically about the village center, thinking long-term about the triangle itself. If anyone's interested, I'm happy to share those with you separately. But from a parking perspective, there was a report in 2013. There was another report in 2017. There was discussions and a consultant was hired looking at Union Street as part of during COVID. And then we're starting obviously to go out and look at collect data in advance of this pilot project. And then we will be continuing to collect data once it gets up and running. But what those studies found kind of time and time again is that parking is almost always available in Newton Center. But there are key times, typically lunchtime, when the spots in the most visible spots, the Langley lot, Center Street, and the roads that abut the lot, and of course Union Street, that do fill up. Um, Again, these are short periods of time, and when that happens, the perception very much so is that there isn't any parking available, and completely understandable. And I've been in that situation, and I know many other people have, and had those conversations with those people as well. However, as the map previously showed, there is a significant supply of publicly available parking down a certain street, whether it's metered or not metered. It's just not easily found, or it's not clearly found. So as part of this process, like we said, there's a wayfinding signage component beyond just the addition of increasing parking as well. And I'm going to really go through fairly quickly these charts, but what it shows is parking counts within those 4 municipal lots, and it looks at the 2017 report, and it looks at 2025 when staff went out over the last few weeks on a weekday, a weekend, and then we did look at Valentine's Day. The 2017 report, just for comparison, that data was collected in 2015. It was collected in the summer. They made sure to go to the Village Center both when there was a Red Sox home game happening and when there wasn't a Red Sox home game happening. So that was the conditions for that report. And then we went again a weekday in February, a weekend in February, and Valentine's Day. And the colored bars, the orange bar is the Langley lot. The blue bar is all the 3 other municipal lots, Cypress, Pelham, and Pleasant. And then what's shown in white is the free parking, the vacant and available parking. And so what you can see here is either A, there is available parking in the Langley lot, morning, afternoon, or night. And if there isn't, which is not frequent, or there are peak moments, there is always available spots in the other municipal lots, or the combination of them. And so again, I'm just going to move through these very quickly. A weekday morning, afternoon, again, that peak, and weekday evenings, again, another peak, particularly around dinner time. And weekend mornings, weekend afternoons, weekend evenings, and then just Valentine's Day in 2025, the expectation that'd be a bit of a busier time. And it was also a Friday, which is probably one of the busiest days, if not the busiest days, at Newton Center as well. The Langley lot fills up, but there are still other spots in the other lots. And then at night. Okay, so with that in mind, shifting gears from a data perspective to the various parking proposals that are before the Traffic Council tonight, this is how we get to those additional 60 spaces that we talked about before. They are in a combination of streets, non-residential streets and residential streets. And I'm going to go through all of those right now. So this is the existing conditions in the triangle in the Langley lot. The portion of spaces that are here, these are the employee parking spaces, these are the Zipcar spaces, and then Blue Bike as you move further east. These are not available to the public. So the idea, again, as the chair mentioned in the docket language, is essentially move those spaces out of the triangle and make those publicly available. And something that came up at the previous, at the Public Safety and Transportation Committee meeting we had last week is maneuverability for the dead end that we're creating. Just want to point out, we're obviously working very closely with DPW on this, and it is not a major effort, and obviously that and any other safety needs, engineering needs, will be factored in as we make these changes. So Lyman Street, this is just north of the plaza. There's currently 8 parking spaces on the south side of the street. It's a 2-way street. The hope and the recommendation here is to make the majority of Lyman Street one way, moving from east to west, except the portion off of Center. This was, I think Councillor Lucas brought this up, and then further kind of looked at the city's engineers and kind of keeping it two-way between Center Street and the Newton Center Green over here for movability, accessibility makes a lot of sense. And so we gain an additional 9 spaces that way. Here is Center Street, just below Bowen at Willow. In addition to adding more parking here, the hope would be to create painting and striping that essentially narrows the lane widths. We know, speaking both with engineering, fire, and obviously police, that this is an area that people speed through. So narrow, both including the parking, narrowing those lanes, so it would help with that traffic calming as well. So we're getting, going from no spaces that exist now to an additional 7 spaces, and the thinking that these would be long-term metered spaces, given that the most adjacent other parking spaces are metered long-term spaces. Here's Beacon Street, just west of Center Street. There's 3 oversized spaces currently. So making these spaces the standard 20 feet would allow us to create an additional space without having to move any further into the travel lanes that exist right now, or turning lanes. Those are the non-residential streets. Now, thinking about the residential streets, Braylon being a residential street adjacent to the T, I just wanted to zoom in and look again at kind of what the existing regulations are throughout Newton Center, and where public parking is allowed on these residential streets. And you can see in black, Dalton Road, Pleasant, a short piece of Pleasant, most of Pleasant is already allowed 2-hour, and Pelham Street are the outliers. There are a few other sections where the roads are just too narrow to accommodate accommodate parking, but essentially these conditions are the outliers. And so thinking about bringing consistency for the village center as a whole is something that we're thinking about here. And it is not something that hasn't been done before or isn't done throughout the rest of the city. So I know this is a pilot, but throughout the village centers and in other places, Newton has implemented and created parking districts where there is parking allowed on residential streets, either 1 hour, 2 hour for the public. It could be allowed for employee parking, and often there are times where there are the exceptions for residential permit holders as well. So this exists in Newton Highlands. This exists in Waban. This is just in Newton Corner. So just to say that these types of regulations, these types of districts and things exist throughout. And again, so I think we're bringing some consistency to Newton Center as a whole, and then obviously looking at what we're doing across the city as well. And just to kind of reiterate and show that, what we're talking about, and I'm going to dive into these 3, Pleasant, Pelham, and Dalton, for those examples. Excuse me. And before, I guess, going into those examples, I want to say that as part of the pilot, of course, we will be monitoring the conditions on these streets, as well as all the changes that we're making. And so thinking about timing for these, if Traffic Council approves that these would happen, the regulatory changes would happen in the spring. We'd start to evaluate throughout the spring, summer, and the fall. And I think this also goes hand in hand with the repaving process and project that I mentioned that DPW is undertaking, which they are aiming for the school break week to do that in the Langley lot, where essentially the Langley lot will be offline, or portions of it will be offline as they move forward. And then coming back here to this group, Traffic Council, to present those findings. And again, it is a pilot, it is temporary, with no action. It would revert back to what it was before. Okay, now I will go into the specifics of these proposals. So looking at Pleasant Street and Pelham Street. So right now on Pleasant Street, there is 2-hour parking on the south side of the street, except for the portion that's closest to the public lot and the village center. And then there is resident-only parking on Pelham Street on the north side. As many of the residents, the emails we received, this dates back to the 70s. I think there was previously also a group home facility on Pelham Street, so there was a different kind of use and need on Pelham Street than exists today. And the recommendation would be to add the current space that has no parking on Pleasant to allow that, making the entire street consistent. I know working with DPW and also speaking with police, thinking about sight lines from the municipal lot here is really important. There is a minimum, I think, of about 50 feet or so between this entrance exit point and this parking, thinking that would be sufficient. And then on Pelham Street, essentially you would be able to gain, unmarked 21 spaces, and this would bring it consistent with Pleasant Street and again all the other streets that we showed before. Dalton Road. So right now there is parking allowed on both sides of the street after 5 p.m. The recommendation here would be to not allow parking on one side of the street, but allow daytime parking, non-metered, time-limited spaces on the west side of the street here, getting a total of 18 spots that would be available, which are currently not available during the day. And at Brayland Avenue, the final proposal, it's not changing the total number of spaces here. There are 6 metered spaces at Langley, and the rest essentially are unmetered, no time limit, except that you aren't allowed to park there from 4 to 6 p.m. And that's really to allow for live loading and unloading, people getting off the T, and commuters kind of coming home from work. There is that kind of, I guess, all the time dedicated zone for that right at the entrance off of Brayland. And so the thinking here would be to update the regulations to create it as time limited, and then allow for parking to happen there, public parking to happen there between 4 and 6. The 6 metered spaces wouldn't change. There's a possibility to look at placing some of the employee parking there, but the rest of them would essentially just removing this regulation of no parking 4 to 6 and creating a time limited restriction, help to obviously help with turnover and allow for customers, more customers to access particularly Union Street and just the south portion of the village center as a whole. Okay, those are the proposals, and then I want to just quickly touch on the outreach that we've been doing and we plan to do, and then show a timeline and return it over to the chair. So we've been working really closely, like I said, with our various city departments. Fire has weighed in, police has weighed in, and obviously all these other departments we will continue to work with to make this the best that it can possibly be, and obviously make it respond to the needs of the project and beyond. We've been working closely with local organizations. We had a public meeting last week with Public Safety and Transportation. The local business community has been very vocal. We've been communicating with them a lot. At informal sessions in Newton Center at their businesses. Thank you, to those who have hosted us in their businesses, which is really wonderful. We have kind of direct lines of communication with a variety of them, and we held an information session specifically with them last week as well. And then we are getting out word to the community through our email, through mailings. And then we have our website newsletter and all these ways that we're trying to keep everyone informed and involved as possible. Beyond that, tonight we're here at Traffic Council We have a design and planning workshop scheduled for March 12th at the Cultural Development Building in Newton Center, 1294 Center Street. It's going to be at 5:30. And then after that, coming with our consultants with a kind of fleshed out design for comments at the end of March, and then we can really get moving on procurement and making this thing a reality. In all these ways, of course, we will continue to communicate with all of you. Something that's been asked is how do we measure success and how we will evaluate this project? So these are all things that we're figuring out, but obviously that's incredibly important to us. So thinking about this summer and into fall when it's up and running, we are also looking in the process of the planning department. I was looking at hiring an intern that can assist with this. We have our design consultant, but user surveys, looking at business feedback, doing additional parking counts in advance of the trial starting, and then when the trial is in place, and then obviously observing the plaza and seeing how it gets used as well. And I think there's all these various reasons why we want to do that and bring that back to the Traffic Council as a whole. So here is the timeline. As was mentioned, the period we were exploring a year-long pilot to see how we could activate this space in all seasons, given that we live here in Massachusetts and not Southern California. But that has been reduced from the summer into the fall, and the plaza itself, starting this summer, will follow the repaving, the reclamation of the parking lot itself. We hope to bring about the redistribution of the new parking spaces, either in advance or in tandem with the repaving, so that when the spaces in the triangle are offline, those additional spaces that we are talking about are already brought online. And like I said, coming back to this council in November to talk about evaluation, success, not success, what worked, what didn't work, things like that. That is the presentation. Apologies for taking up so much time. I will turn it back over to the chair, and looking forward to answering questions as I can.
All right, thank you very, very much, Zach and Barney, for the presentation. So now we're going to move on to the public comment portion of the meeting. Actually, before that, before we go to public comment, I just want to see if there's any clarifying questions from the members of Traffic Council. So any of the five, well, besides me, any of the four other members of Traffic Council, if you have any clarifying questions, if you could just raise your hand, we can clarify. And then after the members of Traffic Council ask their clarifying questions, we could open it up to public comment and the comment from the counselors. I think there's about 7 counselors on the call that I counted last time. Counselor Downs, did you have a clarifying question?
I did. So, is the plan you've put before us final, or is it likely to be changed and adapted as you get more input?
And I would ask someone from the planning department to respond to the clarifying questions.
I'll take a shot at it. So it is a final plan with the caveat that it is a pilot. As Zach mentioned, we're going to test some things. I think in the course of the pilot, if we find something is radically not working, we have the ability to change it. There may be things that we see out in the field that cause us to change something for whatever reason, but yes, this is the plan.
Okay, thank you.
And Councilor Danberg, did you have a clarifying question at this point?
Yes, a question on Breland. I may have missed exactly what you're doing on Breland. I understand that you're going to take away the 4 to 6 and allow that to be a 2-hour zone. Is that the case?
The exact amount of time I think is not clear yet, but to provide a time limit, but then at the same time allow the parking to happen from 4 to 6 as well.
Okay, and that there will not be any meters placed on Braylon because we want to make sure that residential streets do not have parking meters in front of the homes, so that if they need use of that or their guests need use of that, we respect that on residential streets. Is that the case? No meters will be placed?
Correct.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. I may not be able to stay much longer because I have to chair a meeting in 10 minutes. But I'm sure that my able counselor companion, Martha Bixby, will be able to handle it. And if there is any further comment later, I'm happy to jump back in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Danberg. All right, so now we're going to open it up for public comment. I think we have maybe, I don't know, between 30 and maybe 40 members of the public on the call. I just want to see if we can get a sense of who would like to make a public comment. If you think that you would like to make a public comment, if you could just raise your hand real fast so I could just see how many comments we might have. So it looks like less than 10 comments. All right, so I think we're just going to go right in order of the hands. And so I'm going to call your name. If you could just unmute yourself, give us your name and your address for the record. And I think I'm going to call on everybody one time. So if you can make all of your comments in the one pass through. And this is not going to be a back and forth conversation. I know that members of the project team will be taking notes during the public comment portion of the meeting. And then at the end, after we hear all the public comments, we'll close the public comment period. I would ask at that point the members, the staff from the planning department or the project team, if they would provide a response to some of the questions asked at that point, okay? So we'll begin with Laurel Durbin. If you could just unmute and then give us your address, please.
Hi, I'm at 86 Dalton Road. So a few concerns. We have it's a very small street. We have a lot of people speeding down it since Grant got the light. Very dangerous situation. Also, personally, our home, we don't have a garage, so we have to tandem park with 3 cars. And that's a problem if people are going to be parking in front of our house, because we need to shuffle our cars. And I'd also like to know, if this is going to happen, what are the accommodations being made for the residents? Did you say something about I don't know what you said, like a permit or a parking permit or something to put, but the residents of Dalton Road have all sent letters, emails to our city representatives and also to the council and to the mayor. And by the way, the mayor's department and this project has not responded to us. We're all concerned about the safety of opening up our street, our little street, to the public for the reasons I just stated. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. And like I said, we are taking notes, the members of the project team, and then after the public comment period, we would be the opportunity for members of the project team to respond to the different comments that we heard. So thank you for that. And we're going to go to the next member of the public, Ryan Gott. If you could unmute and just say your organization.
Hi, Ryan Gott. I am the owner of the Corkin Board at 1207 Center Street in Newton Center. Just wanted to make a few comments regarding tonight's meeting. One is that parking convenience is king. While we might have outliers in Newton Center that are available for public use. The fact of the matter is that people just don't use those spots. People don't want to walk, even if it's 5 minutes away. Plus, there are people with children, or they have mobility issues, or they just want general convenience. But the fact of the matter is that the parking that we're considering taking away is central, vital parking for the businesses in this area. And it's basically the type of parking that people look at that center lot, and if it's full, they just keep on moving. And so taking away 24 spaces or a net of 8 spaces, depending on how you look at it, I think is a mistake. Secondly, I think that the surveys that have been performed both back in June of 2015, as well as the one in February of 2025, you're not comparing apples to apples on those. One was taken in the summer, the other was taken in the middle of winter. Both periods of time are really not telling you what's going to happen with the parking situation when we're running this program in the summer and fall. Lastly, just 2 comments. One is that I was wondering if there are any spaces available at the Cultural Development Center in the lot that they have, whether any of those spots back there could be considered public parking to help alleviate any loss. And lastly is I do continue to believe that we should be utilizing our park space that we already have in Newton Center and thinking about a way to make the program work with that park space as opposed to taking away central parking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gott, very much. Our next speaker, I can't quite read it. Is it Yaniv Bejarano?
Yes.
Sorry if I massacred that.
No worries, no worries. Yaniv Bejarano, pleasure meeting you. So I'm on 16 Everett Street in the corner of Dalton. And I want to echo what Laurel said earlier, that there are many cars that are coming from Gibbs Street. It's quite a slope there. There is a stop sign there, but many times cars don't stop and they just speed down Dalton Street. And if that proposal would make this street narrower than it already is, it definitely possesses risk both for the people who are parking there, but also to walkers who are walking on the newly generated crosswalks. The second thing I wanted to ask is, given the opportunity that Newton is pursuing to green the city, meaning reducing traffic and moving more and more people to bikes and walking, I'm wondering, and public transportation, I'm wondering, why a loss of, I'm trying to get the numbers right, if it's 14 spaces or 18 spaces, is actually resulting in increasing the number of spaces by 64. If I have the number right, but definitely there is a smaller number of spots that are being taken as compared to the number of spots that are being added. And I'm just wondering, as a city that is definitely trying to green everything, why is that completely opposite to that paradigm?
Okay, thank you for that comment. And like I said, there'll be, after we're done with public comment, there will be an opportunity for the project team members to respond to the questions asked. So thank you very much. And we're going to move to Andrew Popper. And we just need your address for the record, please.
So 93 Union Street. And at last week's Public Safety Committee meeting, we heard from a brave woman whose voice trembled as she described how affected she and her neighbors around Pelham Street are by this parking plan. As a psychiatrist who lives in Newton Center and works on Union Street, I represent a different differently affected group, elderly people with various limitations, who have been excluded from the recent meetings on this issue because the meetings are held via Zoom, which for various reasons they cannot use. They need to be treated in person. They can't manage rideshare apps. They can't safely walk from farther spots, and they already struggle to find parking near Union Street, sometimes deferring their health care as a result. I get lots of feedback from them, and they sound a lot like that resident who spoke last week. One recently said to me, "It seems that Newton has fallen out of love with the automobile. If only the trains would work." To be clear, my concerns are not for my business. There are plenty of younger telehealth preferring clientele who need care too. My concerns are for my elderly patients and the sense of community that deteriorates when people just stay at home and use telehealth. I asked the city to provide the data it used to justify this process. The city's report found that, quote, on-street parking in the core of Newton Center is functionally full, and it concluded that the city needs more parking, not less. That data was never acted upon, presumably because the data is not what I or anybody else would want to hear. But we do have a choice now. We can listen to our neighbors and to our elderly population and make data-driven decisions, or we can do what we like and make cuts to parking and pretend that it won't hurt people, which is sadly like what we're seeing nationally these days. Personally, I'd advocate for implementing a vision like the one Councilor Farrell described at that meeting last week, a wonderful Newton, a Newton that values the elderly, that cares about people with illness, that respects the abutting neighbors, and that appreciates our businesses. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much. We're going to move now to Richard Silton. Hi, Richard. You're Pelham Street, right?
Yes. Hello. I'm 37 Pelham Street. Appreciate your time. Unfortunately, I could not attend last week. I'm going to read because I got a lot to say. I don't question the good intent of the proponents of this proposal, but I'm astonished to witness the disruptive plan being moved forward to solve a problem that doesn't exist. That was really confirmed by Mr. Lamel's presentation, that we only have a perception of a lack of parking. That's almost enough for me, but I'm going to keep going. Why are we going to try to solve a problem that doesn't exist? Why is this being pushed? Why does it have any inertia? I don't understand. The proposal is to take away parking that already exists, reassigning the spots to the neighborhoods to create a community space 2 blocks from a beautiful, enormous park that has plenty of room. Once again, it makes no sense. This would entail creating public parking in front of the Newton housing facility next to me on Pelham Street, where there are wheelchair-bound residents needing access and where vans pick up the elderly every day. Was this considered? Did anyone think through the safety issues of this? The Pleasant and Pelham lots already dump out onto Pelham Street. There's a ton of traffic going down Pelham Street already because that's the only place you can go. So that's not a good idea. With the new state law allowing ADUs, of which there's already one being built on Pelham Street, there will be more need for resident parking, not less. Did anybody think about that? This is being sold to us as a trial or a pilot. Many of us have read Cass Sunstein. Once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it ain't going back. So I urge everybody to really stop this in its tracks. And while this forum may not be right for me, rather than this plan going forward, let me suggest some things that need to happen in Newton Center first to make it more livable. Put an end once and forever to the trash trucks coming all hours of the night in violation of long-standing city ordinances. I've complained to the police about this for years. One terrific, dedicated, earnest Sergeant Rooney cannot do this by herself, but she is made to. The same thing with the food delivery trucks that come in all hours. This has been going on for years. So trying to sell a resident a plan, trust me on this, when the city can't even get that straight, really, it's pretty empty. Force CVS to get their trash under control, which spills out all over the parking lot and no one does a thing. Force CVS to stop using the public sidewalk as a storage place for their pallets. Consistently and competently remove the snow from the sidewalks in Newton Center that are responsibility of the city, like all the citizens are required to do. So if we want to make everything more livable, let's start there. Lastly, the sidewalks in the heart of Newton Center don't connect to where they're supposed to. There were new cross ramps put in. That's wonderful. Those lights are great. They help with the safety. But once you get onto the sidewalk, you can't go straight anymore. Who thought about this? Let's take whatever money we think we have to spend and at least connect those dots. So again, I think this whole thing needs to stop and let's back way up. We're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist, and there's tons of problems that do need to be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silton. The next person I see is Norman Nyberg or Nyberg.
Good evening. I'm talking on behalf of Norman Nyberg. I have him here next to me. He's my 96-year-old father-in-law. He lives at 72 Dalton Road. And basically, it's kind of like deja vu. I'm from Brookline, and I'm actually involved with a lot of the same stuff that we're talking to here. Removal of spaces, parking studies, pushing business parking out to the residential areas. And also things you guys mentioned like waypoint signage and things to make it easy to move people and find them to the parking. We're doing a Center Street parking lot study as well, and one of the things we found out is yes, there's increased density in that parking lot just like yours, and one of the things they're coming up with is they're going to increase the meter price to push people out to satellite parking areas in another area. That being said, creating cultural space for community functions is a good idea. Removing spaces can tip a balance of an ease of access, as business people have been talking to the business district, and impact in a very negative way, not only the business district, but the residential areas with regards to quality of life. 2 letters were sent from Dalton Road to their appropriate representatives. Residents of Dalton, for the most part, are opposing this ease of parking and creating parking as a trial. In addition, I'm talking on behalf of my father-in-law, who's 96 years old. He has limited mobility, and he has a need to gain access to his house at 72 Dalton Road. If we put in parking spaces, it's going to disrupt his ability to be able to get in there with regards to being right in front of his house. Lastly, the thing I want to say is that I hear consistency, but consistency is going to lead to extra parking density in the residential area. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you listening and hearing what my father-in-law had to say, and I was talking on his behalf. Thank you.
I'd like
Thank you.
to add a little bit to that.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a handicap parking sticker. The way it's set up now is that there's no public parking on Dalton Road during the day. If you change it, you're going to open it to parking from early in the morning until after business hours. What I would like is to have either a handicap space put right in front of my house so I can park when I do my shopping and stuff. That's about either handicap or a resident parking one would do for me.
All right, and I'm going to ask a clarifying question of you.
Sure.
Can you tell me if you live on the west side of Dalton Road or the east side? Is it
West.
the side closer to Newton Center?
He's impacted. He lives on the west side, sir.
So you live on the west side, the side
West.
that we would be allowing parking.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for your time.
All right, so we're going to move on to Karen Bray.
Hi, my name is Karen Bray, and I live at 38 Stern Street in Newton Center. And I moved here in 1988, and the first thing I noticed was that the heart of Newton Center is the heart of Newton, and the heart of Newton Center was a parking lot. And I thought, ooh, that's sad. That's very sad to me. I wish the heart of Newton could be green and beautiful. And suddenly a group was formed to transform Newton Center. And they started talking about turning the parking lot into a big green space. And I was really excited. And then people started complaining, and they divided it up into 3 groups of different amounts of change for Newton Center. And then it got smaller, and then it got smaller, and then nothing happened. And I fear that that's going to happen here. I mean, this is not my ideal. What I would like ideally is to make the whole parking lot green grass. The green right now is so well used. People love it. It creates beauty. Talk about taking care of our elderly and our Newton citizens. Having beauty is better for our mental health. It's better for building community. I've made new friends in that greenery. I love the pianos. It's so great. And if we had a beautiful center to Newton, it would benefit the businesses. I don't understand why businesses complain when we want to make the parking lot more beautiful. I do not understand it because, I mean, what I would like is if we blocked off Beacon and we blocked off Langley and made it all pedestrian and green and a little kiosk. I mean, I've been to France. I've been to Italy. I've lived there and I know how they care about their residents. They make beauty for their residents because in European countries, they understand that beauty is so much better for your mental health and for building community. So it would benefit Johnny's and other restaurants if we had a more beautiful Newton Center that people could walk to. We can creatively deal with the problems. The gentleman who was just speaking, get him a handicap parking place right in front of his house. That seems kind of simple. Let's deal with it creatively, but let's also create more beauty for Newton residents. I worry that we're calling this a trial. You've shortened the time already. You've shortened the amount of space. And this is not even green. It's just on asphalt. I worry that it's just going to disappear like the other transformation of Newton Center did because people are going to complain. Right now, people eat ice cream on the corner of Langley and whatever, on that corner, right next to the filthy trash can. They sit on a parking bench. It's so gross. It's so unpleasant. What would happen if we got to eat our ice cream cones out in a beautiful green area with park benches and a little kiosk for ice cream and coffee and pastries and something to that would be attract people in the winter also, a little, I don't know, we can get creative about it, but not a parking lot. It's just so sad to me that we just love our cars so much. And I know we are creative enough to get enough parking. What about behind Walgreens? Put a couple of layers of parking garage behind there. I'm sure there's a reason why it hasn't been thought of, but yeah, someone talked about people staying home. Yes, we wouldn't stay home if we had a beautiful place to walk to or go to in Newton Center. It's just so sad to me. So it would hugely benefit the businesses and the residents if we could make it more beautiful in Newton Center. And I hope this pilot turns into greening the whole parking lot.
Thank you very much for, did you share your address with us?
38 Stern Street. Yeah, I walk to Newton Center all the time. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much for that comment. All right, so Danny Sands.
Yeah, thank you. Danny Sands. I've lived in Newton with my family since 1988 also, as a prior speaker had said. My address is 56 Solon Street in Newton Highlands. And we love Newton. That's why I've been here for so long. And so I want to make a few comments. First of all, thank you for your care in preparing this study. Secondly, I agree with Richard's comment about the existing availability of open space in Newton Center. We already have a lot of it that we could better utilize. But I appreciate the prior speaker's comments about, maybe we could just get rid of cars. I don't quite think we can do that. Maybe it'd be nice to have more green space. I'll get to that. But I think that I also agree with Ryan about the challenges that we have had with parking there. And I think that I'm going to try to make this real. I've been frustrated so many times when I want to go to Newton Center because that's where the action is, and I want to meet friends for dinner, and I can't conveniently find a parking space. And that's because I think it's important that the traffic committee take into consideration the fact that when you're a user, you're a citizen, there is an intersection between the parking availability and traffic. So if I'm trying to drive the 10 minutes or so it takes me to get to Newton Center and I want to find a parking space, I kind of want to find a parking space now. But when I'm driving in a Newton Center, it's not just about, well, there might be parking somewhere else. And yes, it's not that far away, except for the traffic. So the need to now navigate traffic, drive around the circle, try to find where I can find parking, that is a huge burden. So I think when you think about parking availability, you've also got to think about what's the traffic like at that time. And so I think that's something that we're not talking about enough. Finally, I think, I agree that it is embarrassment that in this wonderful city that we have, that at the center of our center is a parking lot. And I would love to see something like what was done in Post Office Square in Boston, where they have a subterranean parking garage, which is wonderful. And yet they have beautiful green space on top of that. So I'm sure many of you have visited there. It's lovely. Why can't we do that in Newton? That's it. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks so much for that. We have 4 more hands up. The first one I see is Angela.
Okay. Hello, my name's Angela Siciliano, and I live on 61 Pelham Street. Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to discuss these issues. I think it's very important that the community gets together to do this. I'm, for the sake of brevity, going to limit myself to the issue of Pelham Street parking. What is somewhat troublesome is that, in spite of the fact that the residents of Pelham Street banded together years ago to secure residential parking only, the city somehow has simply deemed that 21 parking spaces are available on our street. There was no contact made by the city to residents of Pelham Street prior to the announcement contained in one of the mayor's very lengthy emails in January that this plan would go forward and that the city had found 21 spaces on Pelham Street. The Traffic Council's predecessors clearly thought we had good reason to secure residential parking only on our street. Should the residents of Pelham Street have been asked if any circumstances had changed that would warrant a change in residential parking only? I would have liked to have thought so. However, we were not. And as Amanda and Richard Heller's email to you points out emphatically, the street is still very narrow. We would still be trapped in our driveways when the 2-hour time limit is violated and the enforcement is less than stellar. This is what occurred when there were 2-hour parking spaces on Pelham Street previously. I lived here then. Just look at what happens the weekend of the Harvest Fair. I have called when people have parked on top of my driveway for an entire Sunday afternoon to no avail. I love the parking department. I'm sure they have far better things to do than to have to come up on Pelham Street on a regular basis. Now, as opposed to when we secured the residential parking only, which I believe was in the mid-'80s, there are many, many more delivery trucks, landscaping vehicles, and pickup and drop-offs of residents and goods at the Newton Housing Authority apartment building, which was not located on Pelham Street back in the 80s. One factor that has remained exactly consistent since then to now is the availability of existing parking in the lots that currently exist. Again, referencing the graphs that Mr. Zimmel had presented, I will quickly go over them that relate to the utilization and findings for municipal lots between 2017 and 2025. The number of unoccupied spaces, and we're not talking about the Langley lot, but all the other lots, and we're not talking about metered spaces or off-street parking spaces. Weekday mornings, 127 unoccupied spaces. Weekday afternoons, 62 unoccupied spaces. Weekday evenings, 152. And by the way, there were unoccupied spaces back in 2017 also. Weekend mornings, 94 unoccupied spaces. Weekend afternoons, 69 unoccupied spaces. Weekend evenings, 164 unoccupied spaces. The city's Valentine Day survey, 91 spaces unoccupied in the morning, 36 spaces unoccupied in the afternoon, 134 spaces unoccupied in the evening. When Pelham Street residents secured the resident parking only back in the 80s, similar figures resulted from empirical studies done by the residents, done at different times of the day, different days of the week. And once again, the Pleasant and Pelham Street lots were underused. Perhaps the answer lies in better signage, pointing out to the public where these spaces are. I would respectfully suggest that as a trial, before the city usurps the residential parking only of Pelham Street residents, which the residents have already proven they need, and before the city subjects the taxpayers on Pelham Street to lack of egress and ingress to their own driveways, lack of parking for their families, guests, and contractors, the city should highlight where the already existing unoccupied parking spaces exist so that members of the public can make use of them and they will be underutilized no longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela, for that comment. We're gonna move, we have 4 more hands up. The next is Julie.
Yeah, hello, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
My name is Julie Levine. I live at 35 Pelham Street. My neighbors have said it already quite well, so there isn't much I can add, but I do want to say a few things. The first thing is Zach opened most of his comments with parking is almost always available in Newton Center. So I'm mystified as to why we're talking about adding 21 or 25 spaces to Pelham Street. When you talk about other residential streets in Newton and around Newton Center that already have parking, 2-hour parking, etc., those streets do not have the 2 parking lots. And to echo what Rich was saying earlier with Silton, the traffic out of those parking lots, the trucks out of those parking lots, the noise out of those parking lots, the dirt out of those parking lots. If you're going to add cars to our street and just make our street a bigger parking lot, you are devaluing my property. You're devaluing my quality of life. You are taking away every good thing that's left about living here. To echo Rich's comments also, and also Angela's, the house next door is owned by the city. There are several elderly residents that are picked up on a regular basis. There's a handicapped resident who the city put in a fabulous new ramp for him. But what's he going to do when he can't navigate because there's cars everywhere? To echo Laurel from Dalton Street, yeah, we have a shared driveway and we also need the street to juggle our cars. And when there's cars parked there, you can't do it. I don't want to be selfish and make this just about Pelham Street, but I really do believe that this street, why are you suddenly deciding that this is the street that needs 21 spaces? But I will tell you again, the parking lots on Pelham and Pleasant Street are tough enough to live with. And granted, I bought my house knowing I'd be next to them, but I don't want to live in a parking lot. And I think it was Angela that was talking about what happens during the harvest fair. If that's what we're going to be looking at, I've called the police because people think that the fire hydrant can be parked in front of. So also I want to echo Ryan, what he said, using the park space would really probably be a much nicer idea. And I don't really understand why anybody would want to have a gathering place for arts and play in a parking lot. So that's it. But my neighbors have said it, but I wanted to go on record as well.
Thank you for that comment.
Thank you.
Next is Ruth H.
Am I unmuted? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
I just have a couple of comments about.
We need to just know your name and address, please.
Oh, sorry. Ruth Hastelink, 45 Pleasant Street. You talked about counting the spaces during the Red Sox game, but perhaps more important is when the Boston College games fill up the neighborhood with cars. And when the Newton Center Green has events, there is no way I can get out of my driveway when people are here for Newton. They're wonderful things that take place in the center, but those are 2 times that you haven't mentioned doing your analysis. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next is R.L. Cooper.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we could hear you.
Okay. Yes, I guess I'm Rob Cooper. I live on Elgin Street.
I'm sorry, did you say Appleton Street?
Elgin.
Elgin Street, okay.
Not a butter, so not, not any skimming games in that way. But I just think this idea is really stupid. I mean, to put a temporary green space in a parking lot seems kind of dumb. I also think it's really bad for businesses. I mean, people want to park where a lot of the density is. So if you have to go a half-mile walk, I'm sure a lot of people don't want to do that, and you bypass the business. And of course, people with physical disabilities also might be impacted as well. And I think the place has always been like this. I'm not sure what the benefit is actually make this extra little green spot benefit. I'm not sure it's making anything better. I do like the idea of subterranean greens, subterranean parking lot. That I think would make sense because it's be millions of dollars. What to spend that. But I know you want to have some people want to have like a traveling villa with a green spot area. But it's impractical through a whole new center area. People want to, park on the satellite areas to get to the areas you want to go. I'm not sure the density of people walking to different places and what the populations are, how dense each business is, with a number of people going there busy every day and how far they walk to get there, where they come from. Is there any data on that? Your traffic map or how people go, how far they go to get to the place they want to go? Or is it all just sort of randomly thought of, let's just take this space away, put a piano here and just call it a day. So, like I said, I'm no skin in the game. I also think by changing roads to be one way also complicates the whole traffic pattern. So like how they did the Braylon Road, you put the bike lane in there. So they made the road very narrow for cars. And I noticed the only time I've ever seen bikes go on there was the wrong way, the one-way street. So it seems kind of, we have these great ideas that don't actually get used where you think they get used. I'm not sure if this makes any sense to anyone, but I sort of think it's kind of not my opinion.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And it looks like our last comment is Elisa Van Dam.
Good evening, Elisa Van Dam, 16 Brayland Ave. Wanted to add my voice to the chorus of people wondering why we are contemplating doing something that it doesn't seem like there is a particular proven benefit, and we have a lot of concerns. I would love to have a beautiful green space there, but we also need parking, and that to me seems like that's another conversation. I just don't see the point of taking away these spaces, and clearly the folks on Pelham have some pretty strong arguments about why we shouldn't be messing with them. No one has spoken about changing the parking regulations on Braylon, so I have volunteered to just note that if anybody thinks that the residents are currently able to take advantage of on-street parking, they are fooling themselves. And perhaps it would make sense to decouple the decisions about putting some time restrictions on Braylon that aren't just 4 to 6 p.m. from the larger conversation about whether we create this community space or not might make sense. But I personally, without wanting to speak for anyone else, am very much in favor of having limited time parking with some kind of resident parking ability, and not having this 4 to 6 thing, which does clear out the parking, but otherwise makes no sense. Thank you very much.
And thank you as well. And our last comment is Carol.
Hi,
I don't want to speak about
And
vehicles.
could you,
I'd like,
would you, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you just say your full name and
oh,
your
I'm sorry. My full name is Carol Carroll. I married it. My parents didn't do it. 325 Lake Avenue, Newton Highlands. I like looking at how cities organize space. So when I saw the project, I was quite excited because you weren't just looking at a play space or a sitting space. You were looking at the whole circulation around the Newton Center triangle. And to me, the omission seemed to be looking at the east end of the triangle, what I call the top of the triangle, because pedestrian pathways or mobility device pathways are very conflicted. And I'm not going to repeat the letter I sent to the commission, but I hope you will continue focusing on that whole aspect of movement of people as well as vehicles in the triangle area. Thank you.
So thank you very much. And I just want to thank all of you for your comments and for participating in this meeting. We've heard a lot of very helpful feedback tonight and also prior to this meeting. So at this point, I'll be closing the public comment portion of this item, and I would ask if there's any city councilors at this point who would like to speak. And Councilor Bixby.
Thanks. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I guess I just wanted to get into a little bit more about sort of the idea that this is a finalized plan with finding all of these 64 spaces and the concerns that we've heard tonight. And perhaps hear a little bit more. I mean, it seems like the phrasing of the traffic council order is, perhaps a little broader, and there might be flexibility, but, it does seem like there are pieces that we might want to think about. We can either get into them now or we could wait, depending on kind of what the answer is to that question.
Okay, thank you. Any other councilors at this point? Of course, you're welcome to raise your hand at any point moving forward. Okay, thanks again. And I guess at this point, I would like to call on either Zach or Barney or, for anyone from the planning department or the project team. I know that we received a lot of comments. Anyone wish to provide any feedback to any of the comments that we heard tonight?
This is Zach Lamel with the planning department. Well, I think I want to echo the chair's words and saying thank you to everyone for coming out and speaking and providing this valuable input, as well as obviously the people who emailed or wrote in. It's really valuable to us. And if we didn't email you or respond directly, that doesn't mean we did not see it. We read all the emails and we work hard to answer. So please look out for a response. Hopefully we can get that to you as well. There was a lot of great points tonight, and I don't think it makes sense to go through one by one or each at a time. I think some of the high level pieces that I want to reiterate is this plan, this temporary proposal, in addition to creating a plaza space, not an additional green space or something different than a green space, is also creating more parking than exists now. I think there was a bunch of times where, or the what is it before the traffic council would create more parking than exists now. So I just want to make sure that that was clear, because I think a lot of people spoke of reducing the overall number of parking available. I think the idea around the residential streets that are being considered, where a residential permit option could be added or kept in addition to the allowance of public parking is a really interesting idea. And I will defer. I think as part of the pilot, that's something that we can do, and maybe that's something that the committee, the council will discuss more thoroughly. Another comment was about Well, another comment was relating to kind of the greenness of the city, and then is allowing more parking not in line with what's green. And I think the greenest thing that we can do is use the available resources that we have. And I think there are people who spoke about parking garages and things like that. And I think there's really nothing green about that except how much they cost. Um, and so I think using available resources where parking can be created on already existing is something that I think is probably the greenest thing that we can do. And then at the same time, making it safer and creating interest and opportunity for people to utilize alternative modes of transportation. I don't work for the MBTA. I do use it, but hopefully we can all see improvements down the road. So again, I think I'll say thank you. I see if any of my other colleagues want to chime in. And one thing maybe is for, I know Ned Codd is with us from DPW. There's comments about safety and speeding, and I wanted to know if anyone from DPW or engineering had comments about the difference how people drive when there's essentially open road versus when there's parked cars, and kind of any data on that, if that was worth bringing up. Not to put anyone on the spot.
Well, I would just offer that on-street parking, when there's adequate width, on-street parking does, provide, it represents some friction for passing vehicles, and does tend to slow traffic down, have a traffic calming effect.
Okay, thank you.
I will just add a couple answers to questions that I was hearing and jotted down. As far as accommodations for residents on Dalton, we are looking at resident permit options. And along that vein as well, I would just really encourage Mr. Nieberg, I believe it was, to follow up with us. And I would defer to Chair Kosis on the process for creating a handicap space in front of his home. I would also add, regarding lack of egress and ingress as a concern, I'm not sure if this was mentioned in the presentation, but all of the analysis of parking on residential streets included 5-foot buffers from driveways. So I just wanted to offer that detail, as well as information that we're looking at following up with signs to that effect. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nora. And I took notes as well. I took some of the exact same notes that we heard from my colleagues. I know Laurel Dubin, I think, you mentioned that you have you're on Dalton with a small driveway. So I just wanted to also reiterate that part of this trial would allow the residents of Dalton to get a permit during the trial period to be able to park, all day really on your own street, and to share the street with the public. So it would be an opportunity to sort of try it out, see if it's something that works for you and your street, see if it's something that you want to retain moving forward. And then I wrote the same note for Mr. Nieberg, or Nyberg, was it? Yes, I wanted to make sure that your house was on the west side, which it is on the west side of Dalton Road. So there is nothing stopping you or a member of your family from applying for a permanent accessible parking space in front of your house. We heard 2 requests for accessible spaces earlier in this meeting. We hear them all the time. And that just is, you just go through the regular traffic council process. We heard at the beginning of the meeting, we heard from Jeannie Farrelly. She's our ADA coordinator. You should feel free to reach out to Jeannie or to the clerk's office and get a request form. Just request the accessible space. And we try to put those requests for accessible parking spaces right at the beginning of the next agenda whenever we could. So those were the 2 things that I wrote down. I do see we have Councillor Downs.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of additional notes. I agree with Yaniv that, if you want less driving, you don't add a lot of parking. But I also agree with Mr. Gott, if it's not immediately available in front of the store and you're just sort of cruising around thinking, maybe I'll stop at the Cork and Board, or maybe I'll go downtown, and there's not an available spot, you will go further on. So having a few spots on Dalton and a few spots on Pelham and Pleasant probably is going to be the ones closest into where people want to be and not the whole street. I agree with Mr. Stilton that there's a lot of things about Newton Center that need to be fixed, and I would email in your list to your counselors in Ward 6 and just see if you guys can work together to solve some of those, but that's not what's before us. I agree with Karen Bray about making Newton Center green. That's kind of what this is all about. For years, we've been saying, what would be better than a parking lot in the center of Newton Center, in the center of the city, and trying to figure out what could happen. There have been a number of groups, things that were proposed, things were rejected. And because we were always trying to get to a perfect solution and nobody could always agree, nothing happened. I'm encouraged about this pilot because it's a pilot. It's a trial. It's a short trial. It's using money that is supposed to help businesses and our economy here recover after COVID. God knows if we're going to get any after the next disaster, but at least we should use this to run some experiments, which Newton hasn't done very many of before, which is why we get all worked up about things, because usually it happens and it's permanent and you never see it change. But this is all about trying stuff out and changing it. And your resident input and your business input on what is working and what is not working will be able to be changed much faster during the trial, because it is a trial. And then in November, it'll all go away. Danny Sands, we had kids in school together who were friends. It is true that a lot of the traffic is cruising for parking, which is another thing I'd like to see the city try to work on by properly pricing parking so that the most attractive spaces are priced a little bit higher for those who are there for a short errand, and employees are encouraged to go a little further away because they're going to be there a little bit longer. Yes, parking is dirty and gross. That's why I don't think we want it in the middle of the most attractive shopping center in Newton, if I may say so. I think we do need to do more street sweeping, and we do need to clean up after it. But yeah, it would be better if we could get around in many other ways. And that's the beauty of Newton Center. There are many ways to get there. I walk there, I bike there, I take the T there, and I drive there. And a lot of other people do that. I take Elisa's point about parking on Brayland. That should be something we try. And I think that's about it for the notes that I took. But in general, what I'm hearing is there are a lot of kinks to be worked out. And this trial will be an opportunity to start working some of those out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Downs. and Hannah Sternberg from the Planning Department.
I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm the new outreach coordinator, and so you may have been receiving an email from me. I'm going through all of the emails. I'm reading everything you wrote. So I just want to put a face to the name of the email that you're receiving, and we truly take into account every message. And the feedback is truly valuable. I know I keep saying that in the email, but you guys are the ones who are living out there, and you interact with it, and this is your community. So that's a really important part, and we do appreciate your feedback. And so, yeah, here I am, and thank you for all your feedback.
Thank you, Hannah. Okay, so now I would like to move to a discussion among the members of Traffic Council, or a motion if anyone is ready to make a motion at this point on this item. So the floor is open to the Traffic Council members. Anyone like to comment or make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve on the understanding that we have some time for comment.
Okay, so we have a motion to hold this item as a long-term trial. So holding this item means that we could move forward with the planning and the implementation of the trial and the pilot. It means that we would be bringing this item back to Traffic Council. It's being held on our agenda, right? So it can come back to Traffic Council. It was mentioned in November, if not sooner. This item would return to Traffic Council for further discussion. So that's the motion that's been made by Councilor Downs. Are there any comments from any city councilors in the room, or any members of Traffic Council, or any members of the Planning Department? Okay, Councilor Bixby.
Thank you. Sorry, having unmuting issues. I really appreciate all of my constituents, Ward 6 residents who spoke tonight and who have been writing in. I guess I just wanted to follow up on my previous sort of semi-question, which was, I think we're hearing some deep concerns about how this will affect residents. And so I hope that we can all make sure as we go along, which, I know you are all set up to do, but that we're ready and nimble to hear and address anything that comes along, because this will change, what has been proposed will change people's experience in lives, in a lot of significant ways. Hopefully there will be some good and some excitement that comes out of this space, but we have to be very cognizant of these, issues. And so I'm just putting that here now, so that we're all ready. And, as things come for everybody's who's on the call, we're here to help you navigate that, and address things. And I would like to, just make sure that we're speaking with residents as we go. It seems like there are still many kind of details to be worked out here, and perhaps some nibbling to make this work even before the pilot goes into place. So I'll leave it at that for now, but please, let's just all stay very on top of these things. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councilor Bixby. Zach, I guess the final comment's yours.
Well, I just wanted to make sure, maybe it's a process or procedural question about approving versus holding. I didn't fully understand. I heard Councilor Downs put a motion to approve, but allow additional comment. And then the chair saying it was a motion to hold to come back in November. I just didn't know. It just wasn't clear to me what was being put forward in.
So what the motion was, a motion to approve the docketed item, which is to vote to hold this item as a trial.
Understood.
So
that's
what's being requested, is to hold this item for a long-term trial. So it stays on our agenda, moves forward, and we talk about it again at a future Traffic Council meeting.
Understood. Yeah. Thank you. Just too many times at other committee meetings. Too much. Thank you.
Okay.
Exactly. That David heard me correctly. I misspoke, but he heard what I meant.
All right. So seeing no further comments, I would like to ask Katie to call the roll on the motion to hold this item for a long-term trial.
Mr. Koses,
Aye.
Mr. Ayala,
Aye.
Captain Devine,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Miss Spiller.
Aye.
All right, so the motion to hold is approved 5-0, and that concludes our business for tonight. Our next traffic council meeting will be on March 13th, so I'll see some of you then. So thank you all again and have a good night.
Thank you very much, Chair. Bye all.